Hey everybody, on today's episode of Madge Unmuted, we'll talk about college D-bags and how to avoid them and what we can do to stop creating them, because this has gotten out of hand lately. I'm really tired of all these. Between the Sorority Rush videos and these kids busted in a drug ring, I've had enough. But we'll talk about that today and what it was like in the 80s instead on today's Madge Unmuted. Hey everybody, and welcome to another episode of Madge Unmuted. I am your hostess, Madge Madigan. Welcome. Hey, I'm going to address this right off the bat. You're probably wondering what the hell happened to my eye. It was a hell of a bar fight, I'll tell you that. No, it wasn't. It was, got this, I don't know, 4 or 5 days ago. I was at a dinner dance at my country club, and it was the end of a golf tournament. It's really kind of a raucous, let your hair down. It's kind of a member guest thing tournament for the guy. Anyway, this one guy was out there, young guy, I would say he's in his early 30s, and was trying to like dance with all of us old ladies, would walk around, swing us around, whatever. He tried to swing me around, he swung another side. I don't even know what happened. Anyway, he was taller, and he was doing this, and his elbow went straight down into my eye. Anyway, that's that. Also, why am I wearing my Greek letters? Well, it's my favorite time of year. We're going to talk about going back to school, college, rah-rah, and Greek life. Anyway, this has always been my favorite time of year, going back to school. I don't know why. Starting out when I was in high school, it meant that girls' swim team, which I lived for, was starting up again. We would start practices about now, and by the second week of September, we were in school. And I loved the football games. I loved the whole tradition of it, and rah-rah and everything, all of that. So, because as I was brought up in a family, my parents both went to Penn State. And they were there my dad started in 1941, 42. But then he went to World War II, and then he came back in like 46, and he met my mother, and then they had a relationship, and then they got married. My dad was in a fraternity, my mother was in a sorority. My mother was in Alpha Zeta Delta, and my dad was ATO. Now, I was in a sorority in college, Phi Mu. All three of my kids went Greek in college. My son was a Fiji, my middle daughter was Phi Sigma Sigma, and coincidentally, my youngest, my third one, my little baby girl, she went Alpha Zeta Delta like her grandma, who by then my mom had passed on, but they were a lot alike, and we always say, she's like my mother incarnate. So it was a really sweet thing. So that was really cool. But so I'm bringing this up too, also because the really unfortunate thing is these fucking idiots from Penn State that had a drug ring that got busted. And then one of the kids' fathers was in on it. And the guy was like a successful lawyer. And why would you throw your life away like that? And the other thing that's weird is these people all got busted in like December of 2024 or something like that, early 2025. How the hell has it been kept quiet and not come out till now? I kind of did a little digging, and I have no idea how it's kept quiet. I don't know. It didn't sound like there were even any recent movements on it. It sounded like it just kind of came out. I don't know why. Anyway, that's neither here or there. But a thing like that is just some asshole kids that were taught that they could get away with anything, that there's no consequences for anything, and we'll always get you out of it, or you won't get caught, or whatever the hell it is. I don't know. I taught my kids from day one, there's consequences to stuff. There's right and wrong. There's also gray areas, but then there's really stupid shit that you'll throw your life way over. So don't do it. Guess nobody taught these kids. So yeah, you get kicked out of school. I mean, there's been that thing over the years that everybody had some fraternity at their school, because sure as hell wasn't sororities. There always some fraternity that, that had the one drug dealer. Everybody knew back then, though, it was mostly to get pot. I don't know if anybody, I mean, Coke was just starting to get popular when I was I don't know, I went to college in 83. So, by a couple of years later it was, but I didn't really know. I knew one person that did it, and I was like, ooh, I stayed away from it. So I don't know if this was dealers or any whatever. There must have been. But so, but even my kids, it's like you always know there's that one kid that got kicked out of school for selling pot, or one guy in a fraternity that got, kicked out for dealing drugs. I remember I had supposedly there was a small car stereo theft ring out of a fraternity in my college. I went to the University of Maine. I won't say the fraternity because I don't know if it's true or not, but they were I didn't really know anybody in it. So anyway, but the other reason I'm talking about this is because I'm just seeing constant Instagram videos of Sorority Rush. I have so much to say about this. So obviously, I was in a sorority. I was a FIMU. This is my sweatshirt from back then. As you can probably tell, all the stains on it. There's still a lot of stains. And what? And also, they placed the letters really far apart. I had to get it made. I had it done anyway. Here's my sweatshirt. And so, I've seen all these Instagram videos. Of course, one I follow my FIMU national sororities account, and then there's a lot of So I get in that. You get stuck in that algorithm, and it just keeps sending you all these sorority rush things. And I know that's its own. There's sorority rush talk, on TikTok, and I've stopped hanging out on TikTok a lot because they've become very crappy to its creators. So I keep seeing these recruitment videos are, like they used to say back in the day, a Busby Berkeley musical or a Cecil B. DeMille production, or, I'm waiting for the Esther Williams, synchronized swimming from above with all the girls, they're just these huge choreographed, and they're all starting to look exactly the same. They all have they must hire like a Dallas Cowboys cheerleaders choreographer, and they all have these 1, 2, and 3, and 4, and 5, and 6, and 7, and 8, and 9, and 10, and it's all the same, and they're in either skimpy outfits or, well, they're all in skimpy outfits, and all the girls in the background have the same outfits on, and they're holding banners and doing everything, um and now, like, the front girls, who are always the focus, that are the main ones doing the choreography, they're like, I'm sure they're the A team, the pretty girls, um the pretty fit, skinny, dancer types. And I don't know if they're like recruiting girls now specifically for those roles, but and they're out there, and they're all, professional dancers, and they're all doing handsprings, and they all like, and another reference to Make Me See Moles is like, they also seem like they're on Solid Gold Dancers. Anyway, so it takes me back. Okay, so when I was in a sorority, everybody has their opinions about Greek life in college. It's not for everybody. It's I don't, it's for some, it's not for whatever you want. I don't like it when people hate on it so hard, but then that's your maybe that was your experience, and I'm sorry for that, and that sucks. But also, I don't I hate it when people lump one whole organization, or lump everybody, because what's that, one bad apple don't spoil the whole bunch, girl. One of the Osmonds hits. I got so much good out of it, but let me tell you what Rush was when I was going through it. 80, I think 83, you couldn't do it your freshman fall semester. You had to wait. So like 84 was like the first time I went through Rush, spring of 84. And um you it was you wore your best little skirt and blouse, and little pumps, and you went around to these, was it teas or was that what you went to? A tea, not a teas, more tea. And the fraternities had a tea, and they would all be in their coat and tie, and you would come over for, in your little dressy outfit. And it was nothing more than like a cattle call to check out the freshmen. That's pretty much. But they were also, oh, you're interested in becoming little sister and all this bullshit. But then there were some girls there that weren't sororities. So then you had the Sorority Rush, which was these round robins. I think they were called teas too, but all it was is basically you went into it. None of the sororities had houses, and it was like you went into their sorority suite, and there was a bowl of punch and maybe some, Hydrox cheap ass cookies, and then you just went around and you had, name tag, and you just, hi, how are you doing? What's your major? Where are you from? Blah blah blah. And then there was a couple different rounds, and they really didn't vary from round to round. Um, each one you got to know a little more. They got smaller and smaller because as the sorority and the girls just kind of like started doing their preferences. You start narrowing it down, and then maybe a couple of rounds. You got more to know each other, and they loosened up and sang some songs, whatever, and then that was it. And then you had bid day. Now, like my daughters, when they were in sorority and Rush came up, it was the most stressful time of the year. It was gut wrenching. It was just absolutely awful. Now my son, who was a Fiji, it was at NYU. Now, granted, there's not a huge Greek population, but it was enough. And their Rush had been like all guys' Rush has been for decades and decades, and will be for decades to come. You go in, you drink a beer, you say, hey, where you from? What's your major? Who you banging? I don't know, whatever. It's just play some pool, play some games. It just that guy, that kid's solid. I know him from blah blah blah. It's just very bro-ish in Rush. Some may be worse. I don't know. Any guy I've ever known gone through Rush was very laid back and just go over to the house, had a kegger, and you talk to the guys. And so then my girls, so my son graduated college in 2016. My girls graduated in 2019 and 2021. And it was like my one daughter at Quinnipiac, she had to go back to school early because they had to go and rehearse. So they would go back to school early and rehearse because they had Rush in the fall semester. So they're, is at the beginning of all their grand, dances and songs and dance or whatever. And then my other daughter, they had theirs in the spring semester. So I think they would start right when they got back from Christmas break. But also Abby's junior year, she was the recruitment chair. They have a new name for everything now, and it's supposed to make it seem, less whatever it is, but it still is. So she it was so stressful, and I guess hers was right during COVID. It was right when they came back after COVID, and it was really stressful because they had to do some of it online, and she was really upset. But anyway, they had to do all this choreographed crap. I don't know how and when these girls do. They must do them at the end of the spring semester or something. How they have, some of these have already had Rush, like Bama. um they have already had, I mean, they have it like in the middle of the summer. I don't know how they do this, but anyway, I've seen videos that it's so hard. I can't even imagine. Which brings me to why I brought all this up. Now, there can be a lot of good in Greek life. I had a lot of fun. um the only bad thing is that I joined because of a bunch of girls that were 2 years older than me, and I adored them, and it was so much fun. And they were everything I was looking for. They were cool. They were cool girls who, um, were into really, some new wave music. They were all, very more Boston preppy, more, I don't know. They were just really super cool. They had the asymmetric hair do's and everything. Then they all graduated. And I liked the girls I was with. I had a couple really good friends, but it's like the whole thing changed. And then also it was right around that time that the drinking age changed to 21. So all of a sudden residential life, started cracking down on parties and everything got boring and stiff and you had to pay attention to all these rules and it just really changed. Not that being able to drink or not was the thing. It's just like there was a lot of you couldn't just come and go as you please like you used to. But the reason I joined this sorority is because that Phi Mu at University of Maine had the reputation of you want to have a good time and the girls stay around and hang out till the keg's done, invite Phi Mu. Granted, we weren't the ones that you wanted to wife up, girlfriend up. We weren't the prettiest ones. We weren't the sluttiest ones you wanted to hook up, or, the ones you wanted to hook, like I said, have a girlfriend, get whatever, the beauty pageant, beauty queens that you wanted to fawn all over. We were just fun. And I liked having that reputation. And there were some, we had some very pretty girls, but we weren't all, we weren't like super feminine, tried out beauty pageant girls, whatever. Um, but I liked it that way. That was cool for me. But also sorority life was not that demanding. Now, like my one daughter ended up having to go inactive her senior year because she was working and they were like, well, if you don't come to this function, she was a bartender at a bar in New Haven that was Yale kids that she made a bunch of money. And they were like, well, you need to come to this function. She's like, I'm working. I work at a bar. I work at a college bar. This is what, and they gave her a really hard time and they gave her ultimatums. And she's finally like, this isn't worth it. So, and that was really sad. But, my other daughter, like, she's still really good friends with a lot of her sorority sisters. And my son, I don't know if he talks to anybody from college at all. But NYU is kind of different, It wasn't real. I'm getting hot in this sweatshirt. It wasn't real chummy and whatever. I mean, when you have New York City as your campus. Anyway, what's bothering me about this new sorority rush is that it takes us back. I don't know how many years, because it's even worse than when my mother was in a sorority in the 40s at Penn State. And it was just very lovely. I love that. You had some meetings, you go to your meeting and you would, decide what parties you would go to, you would decide what you'd do, some fundraising things, you decide what you were doing for this function, that function. There were games that, Greeks participated in a lot of stuff, and then you went to some lovely mixers with some boys, at their fraternity. And it was just, they were in a coat and tie and the ladies were in dresses and pumps and, you had your cocktails and what have you. This now, I mean, there was a time when like the 60s and 70s weren't even this bad. I mean, they were all still the sororities were still kind of prim and proper until I think about the late 70s and early 80s. The 80s was when it started to get later in the 80s when it started to get a lot more, big hair. They all looked the same. They all, started doing the song and dance and everything. And it just became a bunch of Barbie dolls. And now, like this, I'm sorry, this these big song and dance numbers and skimpy outfits and flips and bump and grind and sexy dance and whatever puts us back decades and decades and decades, to where it's all about looks. It's all about looks. you're going off of a video on how great everybody looks and how great they perform. It's performance. It's based on performance and looks. You can't say, look at that, like, hey, I really like that girl. She's cool. We like the same music. No, they're looking at how, how well they twerk and everything. And it just makes me so sad. And it's so competitive. I see all these videos about, you have to have there's special dress for each one. I remember even my daughters, it's like, oh, for this, it's this theme and that theme. And oh, we all need to wear a white dress. We all need to wear a black skirt and black heels. They're having to go out and buy thing. I couldn't have afforded that. And I know there's a lot of girls in college that can't afford that. They're there to get an education. This stuff is such bullshit. I wish they would ban it. I really do. And I'm so mad at my national sorority. And I will tell you this right now. Phi Mu out of Macon, Georgia, which was founded in 1852, second oldest sorority behind AO Pi or Alpha Phi, I can't remember. But they were 1 year apart. Anyway, you guys just suspended, temporary closed, permanently closed, whatever you did to my sorority chapter at the University of Maine that was founded in 1912 because it got down to just like 10 girls. Now, had you known any damn thing about sororities in the Northeast, they are just based on cool people and fun. It ain't all glitz and glamour and baton twirling like it is down in the South. And you are a Southern sorority, and you've never paid attention to any in the Northeast. As a matter of fact, I think they're all gone. The last I knew was there was one. I tried to help the one at Cornell that you brought back, and you were absolutely no help. They had a beautiful house, they had some great girls, and you gave them no help because they just weren't the Southern belles that you like. They have 100 girls that all look the same. And there were some really cool girls there, really smart girls, and you just blew it. And you'd rather put all your money down there where it's just the Dallas Cowboy cheerleaders in Greek letters. And that really upsets me. You're not doing, and you talk about helping women, and every time I look at your Instagram or your stuff, aside from the occasional, the Rush videos of, the Broadway productions, you will put out everything in your magazine and all these other publications. You'll put on like you're some fine upstanding, all the girls that are in it and all the girls that model the things or that represent collegiate. You've got a not real skinny girl, a not real pretty girl, either an Asian girl or a African American or some other that you're trying to show that we're diverse, and you try in all your other publications, you try and go for this, we're not all about the looks and everything, we're all about the individual girls. And it's like, you are so full of crap. And that makes me really angry because you don't support any chapters that have girls that are actually like that. And that's what makes me really mad. Phi Mu, I'll tell you that. It just, you can't, and you all perpetuate this. All you national headquarters, you all perpetuate this glitz and glamour and grand production and, Broadway productions, Bollywood productions that are in front of their sorority house. And you're not helping women. That's why when, we still, people, oh, women have come so long way. There's no misogyny anymore. There's no this, there's just bullshit. Women are based on their looks so much, it's ridiculous. Why do you think that whenever there's an argument between a man and a woman, or a man arguing about a woman, like you said, a certain politician, the first thing he'll go to is, oh, she's so ugly, I wouldn't have raped her, or his wife is so ugly. You go right to the looks. Does anybody do that about a guy? He has a face like a pug. No, they're just like, oh, he's a douchebag or whatever. They don't, it's still all about looks. And I will say something controversial. There's a lot of problems with transgender women. They will be often under attack. They will be scrutinized. They're always called names. There's always, if they look still remotely masculine, they make fun of them. You know why? Because women are based on their looks. So when you're a transgender woman and you don't pass, they think you're a man and they make fun of you. Hell, even if you're a cisgender woman and you look like a man, they're going to make fun of you. Even if you're not so pretty, they're going to make fun of you. Got a few extra pounds on you, they're going to make fun of you. Everything you do, not saying all guys, not saying all women. Oh, that's the worst too, though. The women that do it to other women, y'all are terrible. You're terrible. We need to support each other. And so anyway, it's always like, it happens, but you hear less about people that are transphobic complaining about trans men because they can pass and they don't really care about looks. All they have to do is grow some facial hair. Now, I'm not saying they have it easy in a cakewalk. I'm just saying it's at first sight, there's not a lot of, and also, I don't know if you look at their social media, and it's the whole bathroom thing. You're always like, oh, a man that's dressed as a woman coming in the man's bathroom, and oh, he might do this to my children and that to my children. Nobody really cares if there's a woman dressed as a man that goes into a man's bathroom. I've never heard anyone all up in arms about that. I'd be more afraid of the trans person that walked into the men's bathroom dressed like a man, because they would find, they get all transphobic, find out they're a man and try and have their way with them or whatever. But mostly it would just go unnoticed because they go in a stall, do their business, and be done with it. I'm sorry. It is obviously easier for a woman to pass as a man in some respects and vice versa, because we have different builds and body structures and facial structures. And I'm all for anybody doing what they want. I want people to accept transgender people, but it's got to start with people accepting other people's looks and not being mean. That makes sense? So that all goes back to Greek life. We got to get out of this spiral that we're in of bigger, broader, grander, greater dance numbers, song and dance, shake your booty, bump and grind. We're all little dollies and short shorts and tank tops. It's got to stop, because where does it end? And that's not what being in a sorority is all about. At least it's not what I didn't go into a sorority to be a object, and no woman should. And I hate that for our younger girls right now. I really hate that. And all of you that are Greek haters, try not to be, but also live and let live. Yeah, there are some really heinous Greek people. There are a lot of total douchebag guys that did some really mean things and, forced themselves on women and, and did really crappy things to guys during hazing. And I think we all know where those guys probably are nowadays. John, he was a Psi U at Columbia. Some of those guys are all still his best friends, and they were a smaller fraternity. One of them, which was a really famous comedian that unfortunately passed away too young, Greg Giraldo. And those are some of the best times of his life that he loved. And he never talked about them all being douchebags to each other. And he went into college in 82. So anyway, I digress. Let's be kind. Ladies, bring it down a notch, please. National headquarters, please bring it down a notch. I beg you. This ain't helping any young girls. I'm sure it's given them I'm sure it's giving them even more anxiety. Oh, we don't want you standing in front of the video because, you have a few extra pounds, or you've got kind of a bad face or whatever. That happens. And that's not setting anyone up to succeed. It's why women have such problems with, self-esteem and self-worth. So anyway, let's get Greek life back to what it was, just a lifetime of networking and some good philanthropic work in college. Thanks for joining me this week. I hope you scribe, share, reduce, reuse, recycle. I don't know, all of the things, review. All those things, please. It helps me out very much. And I hope to see you back. Oh, I'm going to start next week doing some shows from New York with some fun friends. So hope to see you all next week on the next episode of Madge Unmuted. Bye.